My name is Elizabeth. I know you're wondering how I got here. Sitting alone in this cold, dimly lit prison cell, the echoes of my actions haunting me. But before you judge me, before you label me as just another woman scorned, you need to understand the story. This is not just about love, betrayal, or revenge. This is about a life shaped by choices, both mine and those of others. This is about a woman who gave her all, only to be left with nothing but shards of her broken heart. I was born into a modest family. My mother, Clara, was the strongest woman I knew, raising me single-handedly after my father left us when I was just 6. I can still remember the day he walked out, his suitcase in hand, his promises of love and forever shattered by the sound of the door slamming shut. My mother cried for weeks, but eventually, she pulled herself together. She always said, "Elizabeth, never rely on anyone to make you whole. You are your own anchor." Those words became my mantra, my guiding star. Growing up, I was determined to be different. I excelled in school, earning scholarships that took me to the best universities. By the time I was 25, I had built my own company, a consulting firm that quickly rose to prominence. I had everything: wealth, power, and independence. But there was one thing I lacked: love. Love was a tricky thing for me. My father's abandonment had left scars, and I found it hard to trust. The men I dated either saw me as a trophy or were intimidated by my success. I had almost given up on the idea of finding someone who could see past my achievements to the vulnerable woman beneath. And then I met him. Derrick was unlike anyone I had ever met. Handsome, charming, with a smile that could melt glaciers, he seemed perfect. At 6 feet tall, with piercing brown eyes and a confident stride, he exuded an effortless charisma. He made me laugh, made me feel seen in a way no one else had. I fell hard and fast, ignoring the whispers of doubt that lingered in the back of my mind. Derrick was struggling when we met. He told me about his humble beginnings, his dreams of a better life, and his determination to provide for his family. He introduced me to his mother, a sweet woman who seemed to adore me, and to his small circle of friends. I felt like I had finally found a place where I belonged. But what I didn't know was that Derrick was playing a game. A dangerous, calculated game designed to bleed me dry. He wasn't the struggling man trying to make a life for himself. He was a master manipulator, a con artist who saw me as nothing more than a payday. Looking back, there were signs. The way he always had an excuse for why he couldn't meet me at certain places. The mysterious calls he'd step away to take. The odd way his mother seemed overly interested in our relationship. But I ignored them all, blinded by love and a desperate desire to believe that this time, I had gotten it right. Now, sitting here in this cell, I can't help but laugh bitterly at my own naivety. I gave him everything: my trust, my love, and millions of my hard-earned money. And for what? So he could build a future with another woman, while I was left with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal. But this isn't just a story about heartbreak. It's a story about survival, about fighting back even when the odds are against you. Because no matter how much Derrick and his mother thought they had won, they underestimated one thing about me. I don't go down without a fight. I first met Derrick on a crisp autumn evening at a charity gala. I almost didn't attend. Work had consumed my day, leaving me drained, but my assistant convinced me it would be good for me to network. The room was filled with the city's elite, everyone dressed to impress. I stood at the edge of the room, holding a glass of champagne, when he approached me. "Elizabeth, right?" he said, his voice smooth and warm. "I couldn't help but notice you standing here all alone. You must be the most intimidatingly beautiful woman in the room." I laughed, a genuine laugh that surprised even me. "Flattery will get you nowhere, mister." "Derrick. Just Derrick," he replied, flashing that disarming smile. We spent the evening talking. He told me about his humble beginnings, his dreams of starting his own business, and his love for family. He listened intently as I shared bits of my life, making me feel like I was the most fascinating person in the room. By the end of the night, I was hooked. For the next few months, Derrick and I were inseparable. He introduced me to his mother, a kind woman with a warm smile and a nurturing demeanor. She told me how proud she was of Derrick and how much she admired the way we complemented each other. I even met some of his friends, who seemed equally supportive of our relationship. What I didn't know was that every interaction was carefully orchestrated. His mother's warmth, his friends' approval. It was all part of the facade. Derrick was a man with 2 lives. One he lived with me, and another he shared with his real girlfriend, the woman he truly loved. Derrick's financial struggles were evident from the beginning. He made no secret of the fact that he was trying to better himself, but was often short on resources. I admired his honesty, or so I thought, when he mentioned needing help to pay off a small debt, so he could focus on his business. I didn't hesitate. "Elizabeth," he said one evening, holding my hands across the table at my favorite restaurant. "I hate to ask this, but I don't know where else to turn. You know how hard I've been working to get this project off the ground. If I could just get past this hurdle." "Derrick, say no more," I interrupted. "How much do you need?" "Just 500,000. I'll pay you back as soon as I can." I smiled, shaking my head. "It's not a loan, Derrick. I believe in you. Consider it an investment in our future." His face lit up, and I thought I saw gratitude in his eyes. But what I didn't know was that this was the beginning of a pattern, a cycle of lies and manipulations that would slowly drain me of my resources and eventually my self-worth. 6 months into our relationship, Derrick told me he had big plans for us. "I want us to have our own home," he said one evening as we sat in my living room. "I don't want to move into your space and feel like I'm a guest. A man should provide for his family." I admired his sense of pride and ambition. When he showed me pictures of a partially completed house he claimed to be building, I was filled with excitement. "It's going to be beautiful," he said. "But I need a little more to get it done. Just a few million. I know it's a lot to ask, but I promise you, Elizabeth, this is for us." Without hesitation, I transferred the money. Over the next several months, Derrick continued to ask for more. Always just enough to seem reasonable. Always with a heartfelt promise that this was the last time. And every time I gave. One day, my best friend Vanessa came to visit me at the office. I couldn't help but gush about Derrick and how hard he was working to build our future. "Elizabeth," she said cautiously, "are you sure about this guy? I mean, he seems too good to be true." "What do you mean?" I asked, a hint of defensiveness in my voice. "I don't know," Vanessa said, hesitating. I don't trust him." I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to sound jealous, but something feels off. I dismissed her concerns, insisting that Derrick was the real deal. But her words planted a seed of doubt in my mind. Months later, Derrick told me he had been scammed out of a significant investment and could no longer complete our home. Heartbroken, I offered to cover the remaining costs. He reluctantly accepted, and I wired him 30 million naira. But then something changed. Derrick started avoiding me, making excuses for why he couldn't see me. Calls went unanswered, and when he did pick up, his tone was distant. Desperate for answers, I hired a private investigator. What he uncovered shattered my world. Derrick had been lying to me from the start. The house didn't exist. The pictures he showed me were of his girlfriend's uncle's home. Every penny I had given him had been spent on himself, his mother, and his girlfriend. They were even planning their wedding with my money. The moment the investigator placed the file in front of me, my heart stopped. I stared at it, my hands trembling. The room suddenly felt smaller, suffocating, as if the air had been sucked out. "Are you okay, Miss Elizabeth?" he asked, his voice cautious. I nodded weakly, but I wasn't okay. Not even close. I opened the file, my fingers brushing against the crisp edges of the paper, and what I saw inside crushed me. There were pictures of Derrick, smiling, holding hands with another woman. The timestamps didn't lie. These weren't from the past. They were recent. "That's his girlfriend," the investigator said. "Her name is Chitara. They've been together for 6 years." I froze. 6 years. Longer than I'd known him. He continued, oblivious to the tears now streaming down my face. "Chitara's uncle owns the house Derrick claimed he was building for you. He's been using pictures of it to fool you. There's no construction happening. The money you sent has been split between him, his mother, and Chitara. They've rented a luxury apartment and are planning their wedding." I gasped, clutching my chest as if that would stop my heart from breaking into pieces. "His mother?" I croaked, my voice barely audible. "Yes," the investigator confirmed. "She's deeply involved. She knows everything." I shut the file abruptly and stood, needing air, needing to escape the suffocating weight of the truth. "Miss Elizabeth," he called after me. "There's more you should know about Derrick's past." I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, tears blurring my vision as the investigator's words echoed in my mind. Derrick wasn't just a liar. He was a master manipulator. He had grown up in a broken home. His father, a small-time con artist, abandoned him and his mother when he was a child. His mother, desperate to survive, taught Derrick how to charm and deceive people. Together, they had spent years moving from city to city, leaving a trail of broken hearts and empty wallets. Elizabeth, the investigator had said, this isn't the first time Derrick has done this. You're just the latest victim. The weight of it all was unbearable. I thought about all the times I had defended him, all the money I had given him, all the dreams I had built around a future that was nothing but a lie. Days turned into weeks, and I couldn't face the world. I stopped going to work. My once pristine office desk was now gathering dust, the phone ringing endlessly with calls I couldn't bring myself to answer. I sat at home, drowning in wine and sorrow, replaying every moment with Derrick in my mind. How had I not seen the signs? How could I have been so blind? I stopped eating. My reflection in the mirror became a stranger. Sunken eyes, hollow cheeks, and disheveled hair. The once confident CEO was now a shadow of herself, lost in a fog of heartbreak and betrayal. Vanessa came to visit one day, finding me curled up on the floor, clutching an empty wine bottle. Elizabeth, she said softly, kneeling beside me, you need to get up. You can't let him destroy you. But I couldn't move. The pain was too heavy, the shame too suffocating. The investigator's findings haunted me. Derrick's past was filled with deceit. There were other women before me, each one used and discarded once he'd taken everything from them. I discovered that his mother was not the sweet, caring woman she pretended to be. She was the mastermind behind his schemes, pushing him to target successful women, knowing they would be too blinded by love to see through his lies. His girlfriend, Chitara, was no innocent victim either. She played her role perfectly, acting as Derrick's confidant and accomplice. Together, they had built a life of luxury on the backs of women like me. I couldn't stop picturing them together, laughing at my expense, planning their future with the money I had worked so hard to earn. The thought of it consumed me, tearing at my soul. The days blurred into nights. I stopped caring about the company I had built, the empire I had fought so hard to create. My employees sent messages of concern, but I ignored them all. One evening, I sat in the dark, staring at the stack of bills and documents I had collected about Derrick. Each piece of evidence felt like a dagger to my chest. I reached for another bottle of wine, but my hand froze midair. The tears came suddenly, uncontrollably, as I collapsed onto the floor. Why? I screamed into the emptiness. Why did you do this to me, Derrick? I loved you. My cries echoed through the empty house, a painful reminder of how alone I had become. Vanessa refused to give up on me. She dragged me out of the house one morning, forcing me to shower and eat something. You're stronger than this, Elizabeth, she said firmly. Don't let him win. Her words stirred something deep within me. I couldn't let Derrick and his family destroy me. I had to find a way to reclaim my life, to rise from the ashes of this betrayal. But first I needed closure. I needed to confront Derrick and his mother, to face the people who had stolen my trust and my future. The decision to confront Derrick didn't come easily. For weeks, I wrestled with the idea, questioning whether it was worth it. But as the days dragged on, the anger in my chest grew. I couldn't let him walk away without seeing the devastation he'd caused. I spent the night before the confrontation staring at the file the investigator had compiled. Every photo, every receipt, every piece of evidence was a testament to the lies Derrick had woven around me. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I arrived at Derrick's mother's house unannounced. The modest home that once felt warm and welcoming now looked small and deceitful. My heart raced as I knocked on the door. His mother answered, her face lighting up in faux delight. Elizabeth, what a surprise. Derrick didn't tell me you were coming. I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, my heels clicking sharply against the tiled floor. He doesn't know I'm here. We need to talk. Her smile faltered. Of course, dear. Sit down. I'll stand, I said coldly, placing the file on the table. Her eyes flicked to it, a flicker of panic crossing her face. What's this? I opened the file, spreading the evidence across the table. Photos of Derrick and Chitara, bank transfers, text messages, all the proof of their betrayal. I know everything, I said, my voice trembling with restrained fury. The lies, the money, the house that doesn't exist. Everything. Her hands shook as she tried to gather the papers, but I slapped them away. How could you? I demanded, my voice rising. I trusted you. I thought you were like a second mother to me. She sighed, sinking into a chair. Elizabeth, you don't understand. Derrick and we've been through so much. We've had to survive. Survive, I interrupted, my voice breaking. By destroying other people's lives? By taking advantage of women who loved him? You're his mother, I continued, my voice now a whisper. You're supposed to guide him, to teach him right from wrong. Instead, you turned him into this. She looked away, her shame evident, but I had no sympathy left to give. I left her house without another word, determined to find Derrick. It wasn't hard. The investigator had given me the address of the luxury apartment he shared with Chitara. I drove there, my mind racing with memories of our time together. His laughter, his promises, his touch, all of it was a lie. The building was pristine, the kind of place I had dreamed of building with Derrick. I marched to his door, my anger giving me courage, and pounded on it. The door opened, and there he stood, his face a mix of shock and fear. Elizabeth, he began, but I didn't let him finish. Don't you dare say my name, I spat, pushing past him into the apartment. Chitara was there, lounging on the couch. She jumped up when she saw me, her eyes wide. What is she doing here? She demanded, but I ignored her, focusing on Derrick. You lied to me, I said, my voice shaking. You used me, Derrick. Everything you said, everything you did, it was all a lie. He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. No, you don't get to talk. I trusted you. I gave you everything. And you took it all and threw it away. He looked down, his silence more infuriating than any excuse he could have given. Why? I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Why did you do this to me? I didn't mean to hurt you, he said finally, his voice weak. I laughed bitterly. Didn't mean to hurt me? Derrick, you destroyed me. You took my love, my trust, my money, and you gave it all to her. I gestured to Chitara, who glared at me but said nothing. I needed the money, he said weakly. You have so much, and you had nothing. I screamed. And instead of working for it, instead of building something with me, you chose to lie and cheat and steal. Chitara, finally finding her voice, stepped forward. You need to leave, she said coldly. You're not welcome here. I turned to her, my rage boiling over. You, I said, my voice low and dangerous. You knew about me. You knew everything, and you still let this happen. She smirked. Derrick loves me. Always has. You were just a means to an end. Her words hit me like a slap, and I felt my knees weaken. But I refused to let her see me break. You can have him, I said, my voice trembling. You deserve each other. But mark my words, this isn't over. I turned to Derrick one last time. You could have had everything, I said softly. But now, you'll have nothing. I left their apartment, my heart shattered into a million pieces. For days, I stayed in bed, replaying the confrontation over and over in my mind. The pain was unbearable, but so was the anger. I decided I wouldn't let Derrick and Chitara get away with what they'd done. With the help of my lawyer, I began building a case against them. I documented every transaction, every lie, every piece of evidence that could prove their guilt. But the process was slow, and the emotional toll was devastating. Nights were the hardest. I would lie awake, consumed by memories of Derrick. The way he held me, the way he made me laugh, the way he made me believe in love again. I started drinking more, trying to numb the pain, but it only made things worse. My company was suffering, my employees were growing restless, and I was spiraling further into despair. Vanessa tried to help, but even her presence couldn't pull me out of the darkness. You're stronger than this, Elizabeth, she said one night as I sobbed into her shoulder. Don't let him destroy you. But I didn't feel strong. I felt broken, hollow, and utterly lost. Weeks later, I learned that Derrick and Chitara were planning their wedding. The news was a knife to my heart, but it also reignited the fire within me. I decided to confront them one last time, this time armed with the evidence of their deceit. I wanted them to see the damage they had caused, to face the consequences of their actions. But when I arrived at their rented home, the confrontation didn't go as planned. Derrick's mother was there, defending her son as always, and the sight of their happy little family was too much for me to bear. In a moment of blind rage, I pulled the gun I had brought for protection and aimed it at Derrick and Chitara. You took everything from me, I said, my voice trembling. And now you'll pay. Before I could process what I was doing, the gun went off. Derrick and Chitara fell to the ground, their lives ending in an instant. His mother screamed, but I didn't hear her. All I heard was the sound of my own heart breaking. I turned to her, tears streaming down my face. I won't kill you, I said coldly. I want you to live with this, to remember this day for the rest of your life. And then I walked away, leaving behind the ruins of what was once my life. I walked out of the house in a daze, my mind numb. The gun hung loosely in my hand, the weight of what I'd done pressing down on me. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of Derrick's mother's sobs behind me. I had destroyed everything, but in that moment I didn't care. The drive back home was a blur. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, the events replaying in my mind like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. When I arrived, I sat in the car for hours, staring at the blood on my hands. I didn't call anyone. I didn't run. I just sat there, waiting for the inevitable. The knock on my door came just after midnight. I knew it would happen. Derrick's mother had likely called the police as soon as I left. I opened the door to see two officers standing there, their faces grim. Elizabeth Adebayo, one of them asked. I nodded, my voice lost. You're under arrest for the murders of Derrick Akand and Chidera Okafor. You have the right to remain silent. Their words faded as they cuffed me, the cold steel biting into my wrists. They led me out of my house, past the neighbors who had gathered to watch, their whispers cutting through the night like knives. I didn't say a word as they placed me in the back of the police car. The weight of my actions settled over me like a shroud. The first night in the cell was the hardest. The walls closed in around me, suffocating me with their cold, sterile emptiness. I sat on the hard cot, staring at the floor, my mind replaying the moment I pulled the trigger. Their faces haunted me. Derrick's look of shock, Chidera's scream, the sound of the gunshot. It all played over and over again in my head. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, numb, as the reality of what I'd done settled in. The trial was swift. The evidence was overwhelming, and I didn't deny any of it. My lawyer argued that I had acted in a moment of temporary insanity, driven by heartbreak and betrayal, but it didn't matter. The prosecutor painted me as a cold-blooded killer, a woman who couldn't handle rejection. The media had a field day, labeling me as the scorned CEO. Vanessa came to see me after the verdict was announced. I was sentenced to 15 years in prison for second-degree murder. I'm so sorry, Elizabeth, she said, tears streaming down her face. I looked at her, my own eyes dry. Don't be, I said quietly. This is my burden to bear. Prison was nothing like I had imagined. The walls were gray and lifeless, the days long and monotonous. I kept to myself, avoiding the other inmates, my mind consumed by guilt and regret. I thought about Derrick and Chidera every day. I thought about his mother, the pain she must have felt losing her son. And I thought about my own mother, who had tried so hard to raise me to be strong and independent. I had let her down. But most of all, I thought about the woman I used to be, the confident, driven CEO who believed in love and trust. That woman was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. In the solitude of my cell, I began to write. I wrote about my life, about the pain of losing my father, about the men who had broken my heart, and about Derrick, the man who had destroyed me, but also taught me the harshest lesson of all. Love, I realized, wasn't the fairy tale I had always believed it to be. It was messy, painful, and in my case, devastating. But I also realized that I couldn't let Derrick's betrayal define me. I had to find a way to heal, to rebuild myself, even if it was within the confines of these prison walls. One day, several months into my sentence, I received an unexpected visitor. It was Derrick's mother. I stared at her through the glass partition, my heart pounding. She looked older, more tired, her face etched with grief. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice cold. She sighed, her eyes filled with tears. "I needed to see you," she said, "to understand why." "Why?" I repeated, my anger bubbling to the surface. "You know why. You were part of it. You helped him destroy me." She flinched, but she didn't deny it. "I know," she said softly. "And I'm sorry. I failed you, Elizabeth. I failed everyone." Her apology didn't ease my pain, but it gave me a small sense of closure. "I don't forgive you," I said, my voice steady. "But I hope you can live with what you've done." As the years passed, I began to find small moments of peace. I started teaching other inmates, using my knowledge to help them earn their GEDs. It wasn't much, but it gave me a sense of purpose. I also continued to write, pouring my pain and regret onto the pages of my journal. It became my therapy, a way to process everything I had been through. And slowly, very slowly, I began to forgive myself. I knew I would never fully escape the shadow of what I had done, but I also knew that I couldn't let it define me. I had made a terrible mistake, but I was determined to find a way to move forward. Because even in the darkest moments, there is always a glimmer of light, and this is my story.